Welcome to NEK VT Rocks. My guest today, in a totally different way of seeing him, is Terry Difazio.
Good to
He's
be here.
usually sitting in this chair.
Sometimes, yeah. Good to see you, Pam.
And you. Terry, tell us about where you've just been.
Okay. As many of you know, I was adopted in 1951, and I went on a search for my biological parents, and I finally got to meet my biological mother in Florida approximately, gosh, I think it was maybe 10 days ago, 11 days ago. And it was quite a reunion, to say the least.
It's amazing, just amazing. How did you find her?
Well, I started in the land far away a long time ago. When I was 41 years old, my adopted mom handed me my adoption papers and said, "You have the right to see these." And they'd never been opened.
Wow.
And so I read them over, and I got an inkling as to what sort of happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I was given certain information by my adopted mom and dad. It turned out that some of it was right on the money and some of it wasn't true.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2003, I started the quest to search.
Mm-hmm.
I hired an agency out of New Jersey and paid them $400. And the woman, whose name was Christina Dillon,
Mm-hmm.
took my money and ran with it. And a lot of other people's money, and she ended up in prison.
Good.
But I didn't get my money back and didn't find anybody. So I wrote to, actually before that, I wrote to Angel Guardian Home.
Mm-hmm.
They were the
Adoption agency.
Yeah, the Catholic agency,
Yeah.
Roman Catholic agency that placed me, and they gave me non-identifying information, and it was rather fascinating to
Mm-hmm.
read. By that time, my adopted dad had passed away, and he was against me. He didn't want me to look,
Right.
but my adopted mom was all for it. She thought this was wonderful to find out things like that. So I sort of put everything on hold, and and Elizabeth Rupert, my adopted mom, passed away in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2011, a very nice woman here in town by the name of Deb Shappett said that she had a DNA test done by Ancestry DNA
Mm-hmm.
without having to actually join the whole 9 yards.
Right.
You give them your DNA, and they were running a sale. Instead of $175, it was $100. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So they started matching me with fourth, fifth, and sixth cousins, and we couldn't make any connection. And in the meantime, through Facebook, my wife happened to bump across the Difazio side of the family. And that turned out to be a fabulous disaster because they didn't want anything to do with me. We found out later why. So then I happened to be searching the internet, and I bumped into this group of people that are all over the United States. They're called search angels.
Mm-hmm.
Search angel, genealogist, adoption rights advocates. And her name is Priscilla Sharp, and she's in Western Pennsylvania. And she took my information and she started searching. And I've been working with her for over 2 years. And lo and behold, about, I think it was maybe 2 months ago, a relative came up as a first cousin, hit. And this woman's name is Lillian,
Mm-hmm.
and she's from, I call it Long Island. She
Island.
doesn't, they don't really say that, but that's what I say. And it turns out that she's my half aunt. She is my mother's half sister.
Mm-hmm.
So we couldn't figure out the connection. And we gave the information, I gave the information to Priscilla, and she said, yeah, this is an aunt of yours, or a half aunt. And this is your mother's half sister. And she went down, and I have a whole genealogy tree that this woman did of how the Difazios, and,
Uh-huh.
and my mom's maiden name was Bernhardt.
Uh-huh.
And it was all sorts of, different names. I'll tell you, the names were pretty good. All the way from Cavaliero to Stump, S-T-U-M-P-F, so however you pronounce that. And it turns out that there's a whole clan of them in Florida that I'm related to.
Mm-hmm.
And I met my sister, Jill. I met my biological mom. I met, and this is if you, we have 5 or 6 hours, don't we, Todd? My mom, whose name was Marguerite Bernhardt,
Mm-hmm.
had me, and at the time, there was no such thing as child support or supportive services like there is now. Thankfully, we've evolved a bit, I hope.
Some, not much.
Yeah. And so my dad at the time didn't want to marry her, so he took off to the Navy, and that's how guys got out of marrying somebody. Is they went into the armed forces. So he went into the Navy, and she gave me up for adoption. And as it turned out through the years, she got remarried she got married about 4 or 5 years later, could not have children for 14 years, adopted 2 boys. Okay? Their names are John and Peter. And I got to meet Peter. And then after they did all that adopting and they told her that she'd never have children, along come my sister Jill. So Jill is 48, Peter's 51, and I think John, the oldest boy, is 53.
And suddenly they have a big brother.
Yes.
Did your mother tell them ahead of time that she had a son?
That's a great question. And you know, this is I don't think I've told you this part, have I? She told Jill about 6 years ago, but never told the boys. So when I finally got in touch, I tried to get in touch with Mom. Priscilla gave me a phone number. The phone number was disconnected. She was moved out of one nursing home and into another nursing home. And when I called Peter's a police chief for Orange County, Florida. And when I'm talking to him, he's a little confused.
He wants to know who this weirdo is who's called him up out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I basically had to reassure him that this was not a scam, that his mom is my mom. And then he finally just said, okay, he said, I'm going to hand this over to my sister Jill, who's big into genealogy. And it turned out that Jill knew, and finally Peter said to Jill, what have you and Mom have been keeping
What other
from me?
secrets
Yeah,
are
what
there?
other secrets do you have? Which was kind of funny.
Yeah.
So they didn't know, but Jill did about
Yeah.
6 years ago. And what was even more interesting, when I spoke to Jill for the first time, my mom's been celebrating my birthday all these years.
Huh.
So what more can I say?
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful to know. It's fascinating. I know a lot of people who have either relinquished a child for adoption or have been adopted themselves. Many of them have searched as well, some with success, some with not. What a lot have found is that their biological mother was not able to tell her current family. And there was a lot of fancy footwork that had to be done around that. Sometimes it worked beautifully, and sometimes there was just one meeting and that was it, and people felt relieved that there was actually a real person and there were some real reasons. And there was shared medical history, which is also a reason for searching for some people.
That was my original intent, was to find medical
Right.
information. And it seems that they're all fairly healthy.
Yeah.
There was somewhat of a history of alcoholism on my mom's side, but my mom didn't have it, but several other people in the family did. And over on my father's side, there wasn't any. And as far as other mental health illness problems or physical things, I think my sister and I shared the fact that we've had kidney stone problems. And over on my father's side of the family, the one sister, half-sister I spoke to, I think she and I both shared the fact that we had nosebleeds until we were 20. But other than that, I'm fairly relieved.
Yeah. Had you grown up knowing you were adopted?
Yes, I believe my adoptive parents told me when I was about 8 or 9. I don't know exactly when, but they told me around then. But when they were growing up, nobody talked about this.
Right.
And of course, with my mom, Marguerite, being a Roman Catholic and having a child out of wedlock was the worst thing that happened.
Right.
You know, I believe in somewhere, didn't they used to stone those people or something?
Yeah.
But, yeah, she
Totally forgetting it takes 2 for that particular tango.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's another story.
Yeah.
We'll do a show about that someday. So, yeah, and so anyway, she was somewhat forced, and I believe she even said that, what I was told was that she gave birth to me and I was taken away immediately and baptized.
Right.
That wasn't true. I was baptized 3 days later, and she actually had me for 1 week before she relinquished me, and she couldn't actually sign off on giving me up for adoption until she turned 18, which was about a month later. Yeah, she was born on June 19th, 1933. So she had to wait from May 22nd until she turned
Right.
18 before she could sign off. So I can't even imagine how that must have hurt her.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I spoke to her about that, and I guess she was quite angry at the time.
Sure.
Hurt and angry, you know. I can't even imagine that feeling. It would be, to me, it would be the equivalent of having a child and losing it somehow, you know, like
Right.
an accident or an illness or something. So,
Well, young women were in such an awful position if
Mhm.
they were unfortunate enough to become pregnant, because they were always the ones that were blamed. It was a fault of their morals.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't anything that was a sort of normal, spontaneous action. And then the kid got punished as a result.
Yeah.
And it's not that adoption isn't often the best solution for everybody concerned, and it's done with all of the best intentions.
Mhm.
But at least if it's done openly. I mean, one of the big differences between now and then, there are open adoptions now,
Yes.
where the family of origin and the adoptive family remain connected.
Mhm. Back then, I believe all of them were closed.
Yes.
I don't know if all of them were, but mine was. And I found out something interesting. New York City specifically, and New York State in general, is the biggest pain in the neck to deal with. I was also told that, first of all, I was told that both parents, natural and adoptive parents, had to sign off on
Mhm.
this. And that wasn't going to happen because by then, well, both fathers died.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mom passed away. Elizabeth Rupert passed away in 2010. But then I was told we can't unseal your records for 99 years. So when I turned 99,
You better live long.
so if I live to 99, what good is that going to do me? You know.
Absolutely none.
So yeah, New York, I guess, is one of the worst states
Yes.
for these open adoption things, and I don't think it should be. I think if a person wants to know, he should be able. The person, you know, he or she should be able to know.
Yeah, I mean, the secrecy never made a lot of sense. When I first came to the States, I worked for an adoption agency in Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of young people came back to the agency and said, "You handled my adoption umpteen years ago. I want to know information." And what we could give was really limited at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could give clues, we could sort of point them in a direction, and there were some of us who were more than willing to do that, and others who obviously were not.
Well, you know, you bring up an interesting point. The person who first gave me my non-identifying information, her name was Natasha Wollanston at Angel Guardian.
Mm-hmm.
The next time I contacted Angel Guardian, she had left, and they'd become Mercy First Hospital in Brooklyn.
Uh-huh.
And I got in touch with a woman by the name of Sister Margaret Dempsey.
Mm.
So she said, "I can't tell you anything more than this, and this." So I said, "Okay, this was my name at birth, and then I was adopted, and maybe I got a different name, and then back in 1998, I changed my name to what it is now, thinking that my birth mother's last name was Difazio." And I said, "Is this correct?" And she said, "No, guess again." I said, "Aha, that's the old man's name."
Right.
So then I probed further, and I found
Yeah.
out the middle name, my middle name at birth was Edward.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Is his name Edward Difazio?" She said, "No, but you're close." And it turns out Edward was his middle name. So I eventually, through Facebook, my wife traced down Robert Edward Difazio. And he passed away in 2002. He died a very, very horrible death. He was exposed to radiation and gasoline while in the Navy.
Ugh.
And he died of myoplastic
Anemia.
something
yeah.
or other, and with thrombosis, and he suffered for about the last 13 years of his life. He died of internal hemorrhaging in 2002 at the age of 70. So at least I got to know that what he passed away from wasn't something that he could give me.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So you changed your name back to your birth name.
No, actually I didn't. I changed everything.
You reinvented yourself.
Exactly.
Okay.
I figured I can't reinvent the wheel, so I reinvented myself. I was born Terrence Edward Difazio. I was adopted and became Terrence Lewis Rupert, a name that I hated, absolutely hated. Don't ask me why, I just hated the name. So when I got remarried for the second time to my current wife, Barbara. I said, Difazio's a nice name. She says, oh yeah, that's a nice name. So I changed it to Terry Difazio. No middle name. Not Terrence anymore.
Just Terry.
Just Terry Difazio, and I don't have to fill out, it saves a lot of ink when you don't have to fill all that out, you know. So, yeah, I did that. And then
so when you look for your FBI file and you have all these AKAs
I know.
that are redacted.
You know, it was funny, when I tried to change my name, I went to probate court.
Yeah.
And they said, you need to give us your birth certificate. So I gave them what was given to me. And the judge said, that's not a birth certificate. I said, it isn't. He says, no, that's a certificate of birth given to you by the New York City Department of Health. So I wrote them again. And they sent me the same thing all over again. He says, well, I'll have to accept this because they're not going to give you your birth certificate.
Did you ever get the original?
No. I found out, though, from my mom, Marguerite, that she had it up until about 5 or 6 years ago, and then after she moved a couple times, she threw a whole bunch of papers out, and that was part of it. She had my birth certificate.
But they should be able to give you a copy.
They should, but they won't. Imagine that.
Yeah.
They would not. The adoption papers listed what my name was, but the actual birth certificate, I can't get.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Even though you've reclaimed the Difazio name.
Yeah. So, at any rate, I found out the Difazios were not very nice to my mom. They treated her very badly after she gave birth to me. And when
of course, it was her fault she got pregnant, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's a whole other story to that.
I'm sure.
It wasn't nice. And that sort of made sense why they rejected me the second time. So that sort of made sense. This side of the family, though, the Bernhardts, they're totally different. They're a fun-loving bunch. Really, they're very accepting.
Any great actresses in that family?
I don't know. I know that my sister Jill has 3 children. The oldest one is, I believe, she's going to be a X-ray technician or radiologist or something. She's beautiful and she's smart. So, and that whole side of the family was a blast.
Right.
They really were. We went out to dinner, I don't know how many times, and I spent a lot of time with my mom. And my mom's had some medical issues, like she's had knee replacements, hip replacements. She's taken some nasty falls, and she's in a wheelchair. She can sort of transfer, but she's had.
She's less than mobile.
Yeah.
You have kids, right?
I have one.
Yeah. Where is he or she in all of this?
Well, his name is Jonathan Rupert. He kept the name Rupert. Why he kept it, I don't know. But
he liked Rupert.
Evidently, yeah. And he lives in Los Angeles. And he's 37, and he thinks this is wild, and he wants to meet everybody too.
It must be amazing to sort of be in your 30s and suddenly discover you have this enormous family that you knew absolutely nothing about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Pam. And what was even stranger was when the Difazios bailed on me for the second time. When I told him about it, he was madder than I was. I'm telling you, between the two of us, we could have set a new world record for chain swearing. He said he couldn't believe how selfish some people could be, that they could reject their own flesh and blood just for some stupid, reason of anonymity when somebody's been looking as long as I'd been looking. So he was even madder than I was. I don't know where he gets it from, but,
I can't imagine, right? Short fuse, what's that? But now he's got another grandmother. He's got a bunch of aunts and uncles, and cousins and umpteen times removed, but he's got a whole load of family that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
Does he have children, your son?
No, he decided he didn't want to get married, and he wasn't interested in procreation. So I said, well, I said, well, John, it's your business. Do what you want. That's right. Although I did make a joke to him when he was 14. I didn't think he was actually going to do it. I said, when he was just as a joke, I said to him when he was 14, I said, John, stay single and bring your kids up the same way. And he looked at me and says, Dad, that's not right. I was just joking with him, and now he's 37, and he didn't want to get married or have children. So it's his choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You should have all the kids you want, but you should want all the kids you have.
Absolutely.
And if he wants to be single, he's working for a company called PaySafe. And evidently they're going to be as big as PayPal very soon. So he sends out these credit card machines, and he programs them and ships them out to various companies, and and they're a European-based company, and he's doing very well there.
That's great.
Yeah, he said that out in California, there's not too many companies that actually take good care of their employees and want you to stay. Some of the places he stayed, they don't want you to stay more than a year because they don't want to pay anything. Yeah, he's told me about a couple of them, so.
Yeah. Well, now he's got a whole extended family that he can get to meet and have a whole new life.
Yeah, this all came to culmination with my Aunt Lily in Long Island. She was the last piece of the puzzle, and I couldn't put the puzzle together. Imagine you've got 1,000 pieces and you just can't figure how they interlock. Well, that's where Priscilla put them all together. And I'm in contact with my Aunt Lily all the time. And my Aunt Lily, she sounds like Cyndi Lauper. She has that New York accent.
Can she sing too?
I don't know. I haven't asked that part.
Yeah.
But she does. She has a light New York accent.
Yeah.
And she sounds a lot like Cyndi Lauper, and she's a hoot. I like her a lot. That was another interesting piece because my grandmother had 6 children, I think. I think she gave up 1 or 2 of them for adoption. She kept 4 of them. 1 of the 4 has passed away. The other 3 are still alive. My mom is one of them. And then my grandmother's husband abandoned them and went off with some other woman, and that's where my Aunt Lily came from. So you can see how this all got pretty tangled.
Yeah, and there may be a whole bunch more reconnecting as other people figure out how to do this. One of the other things that you're saying that's really fascinating is the role of the search angel.
Yes.
How do people find a search angel?
I don't actually even remember how I found her, but I know it. I looked somehow. I bumped into this website that said search angels, and what they did and how they helped. And I said, well, what have I got to lose? The Difazios bailed on me for the second time. They had to deny their own flesh and blood. Not once, but twice. Nice. Some nice people. I should have made them an offer they can't refuse. We have ways to deal with these things.
Yeah.
I don't actually remember how I bumped into her, but when
Is it a fee service?
No.
It's free?
They don't charge a thing.
Wow.
Miss Priscilla Sharp had a very, very bad accident back in 1972 or 73, and she has a partially crushed spine. She can move around her house, but she can't leave her house.
Yeah.
So she's basically on the computer helping people reconnect.
That's fabulous.
And she doesn't charge, but I gave her a present already, a Thanksgiving. I gave her a great big bunch of stuff from Jed's Maple. And she said, wow, she said, I didn't tell you I was born in Brattleboro. So she loved it. She loved that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend to anybody, if you're interested in reconnecting, that's the place to go. And if you want to contact me, I'll tell you exactly how to get in touch with. There's another one in New York City that I spoke to, and I can't remember her name offhand, but she didn't have as good a luck.
Yeah.
I think she was too busy. I cannot remember her name. I have it, but I can't remember her name. But Priscilla was incredible. Every time I fed her information, she finds another piece. One thing she gave me about 1.5 years ago was a list of 88 names of women who were born in New York State and New York City on the specific date my mother was born.
Wow.
And I'm glad I didn't bother to go through the whole
Hundreds,
thing.
probably.
No, I was actually 88.
Wow.
Or so. And it was a good thing I didn't bother to pay $35 to go in and try to find her. Because I had the birth date and I had where she was born in Queens. Because that list was only of women who had passed away. And Mom hadn't passed away yet.
Right.
So I dodged the bullet. I saved a lot of time.
Yeah.
So that was another interesting piece. But this is what a search angel can help you do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the hours of time that have gone into this.
Oh, yeah. I've been searching for 14 years, and Priscilla's been helping me with this for 2.5, so I have nothing but good things to say about her.
And your adoptive mother, unfortunately, never got to be able to connect too.
Right.
Which would have been wonderful because she encouraged you.
Yeah, and Elizabeth Rupert, my adopted mom, when I told her the non-identifying information, she went right to tears and said, "That poor woman, I can't imagine having to give up a child."
Right.
She was more sympathetic. Whereas my father Lewis, he didn't want. Didn't think that was a good thing. Leave well enough alone. And
right.
That's the old New Yorker.
The old way.
The old New Yorker, and so
Yeah.
some people don't want to know, and I've talked
And
with a lot of
others
people
do.
that don't want to know, and that's fine. That's your choice.
Yeah, the availability of things like Ancestry and the other genetic coding company, I can't remember their name.
23andMe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one. I mean, what that has been able to liberate is amazing.
Yeah.
I have a friend who has 4 adopted daughters.
Oh, wow.
And her daughters are all adopted from China.
Oh,
And one of the daughters, they did it as a family, the 23andMe. One of the daughters has found a full biological sister
wow.
through that, and apparently a parent in China. It's just pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's information that we as individuals are entitled to know. We need to know who we are.
Yeah.
At
Well,
least I think we do.
yeah. And like, it's a good point you bring up, and the thing too is if you don't want to know,
Don't have to do it.
about 7 months ago, a woman by the name of Melinda Marshall came up with a hit as a cousin. And I stayed in touch with her, and now that I got close, she got scared. And then she's backed off, and she goes, I'm okay with not knowing. I don't want to know, because I think there was a history there, and nobody else in the family seems to recall
Yeah.
this name. So if she wants to let it go, that's fine.
Right.
She did pay for the DNA test, though, but if I paid for it, I'd want to know,
And maybe she will in the future,
Mhm.
particularly if she reads anything about what you're doing with the information and how you've
I
connected,
gave
because
it
you're being
all.
pretty public.
I've give it all to her. I sent her
Yeah.
pictures and everything, and she said, I'm still okay with not knowing, but I'm so happy for you.
It's really nice.
Yeah, that was nice of her.
Yeah.
And so, it's like I've said, if you don't want to know, that's
Don't do it.
cool. And if you want to know, there are avenues now. This secrecy you don't have to be saddled with that secrecy
Right.
anymore. I don't know how they do it in other countries, but I guess certain states here in the U.S., it's easier to find than other states. New York happens to be
Yeah.
a pain.
And at least for parents who place a baby for adoption, now they can attach information to the baby's file that says, in the future, if my child wants to get in contact, I would welcome that. And they can give information and they can follow up with that. But that wasn't a possibility when you were born.
No, and I would imagine even today, if there's closed adoptions, then
Yes.
you're still stuck with that.
Right.
So I did ask my mom if she had given up, and she said, I didn't have much hope. She said, I was always hoping that, what would happen. And what the irony of all this was, the past 4 or 5 years, my wife and I have been going to Florida to vacation for a month, and we've been all around her. She's been sitting in, I don't know how to pronounce it, Ocoee, or Deltona,
Yeah.
or Orlando, and we've been all around the area. So
Did Barbara go down with you?
yes, she did.
Great. So she got to meet your family too.
Yep.
It's
And
fabulous.
it was the thing that was so interesting was almost immediately between Jill, my sister, and Mom and I, we bonded almost immediately.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was like we'd never been apart, which was pretty amazing to me.
Yeah.
Very,
It
very
is.
amazing.
Well, on that positive note, we are out of time. I hope other people see this and that something grows from it.
Well, I think it's an important thing, and I'm glad that you took the time and the effort to do this. Another person did an interview with me before I went down, and she's a little incapacitated. She had a little injury or something, and she's going to be out of commission. But I'm glad you did the follow-up. I think it's
Yeah.
important, and I'm very, very glad that you did this, Pam.
It's a really important subject, and it applies to so many more people than we ever know, because even those who didn't know about a child being placed, you've got cousins who never knew,
Yeah.
never knew of your existence, and now they know. They've gained a family member.
And it's really cool to have them get excited about, hey,
Right.
look who's here.
Yeah. I mean, it's the sort of thing I would love to know if I've got mystery family somewhere, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You do now.
Exactly.
Okay, well, thank you for doing this.
Well, thank you, Pam. The pleasure was mine.
It's great.